I went on a work trip, leaving my wife at home with our daughter. As soon as I left, my wife went out to spend the night with her lover, leaving our daughter all alone. She turned off her phone and didn't respond to any calls. Then, I received a call from the hospital. My daughter was in critical condition and needed a donation. I cut my trip short and rushed back, but by the time I arrived, it was too late. My wife's betrayal had led to a tragic end. The story begins with Jack, a dedicated IT consultant from Chicago, who speaks directly to the audience. He talks about how his demanding career often takes him on work trips, leaving his wife Emily and their 6-year-old daughter Lily at home. Jack's love for his family is clear as he explains how he works hard to provide them with the best life possible. However, he shares a troubling feeling that something has been wrong with Emily recently. She's been distant, distracted, and less affectionate. Jack brushes it off as stress from parenting and household responsibilities and decides to focus on his trip. As Jack finishes setting the stage, his tone shifts to a more serious one. He looks directly at the camera and asks a haunting question. But what happens when you trust someone so much, only for them to break your heart in ways you could never imagine? This question lingers in the air, pulling the audience into a story of betrayal, heartbreak, and irreversible tragedy. Jack shifts from his somber introduction to reflecting on the life he shared with Emily and Lily. He recalls the tender moments with Lily, a curious and playful 6-year-old who loved spending time with her dad. From bedtime stories to their weekend trips to the park in their suburban Chicago neighborhood, Jack shares how Lily was the light of his life, her laughter filling their home with joy. He emphasizes that being a father was the most fulfilling part of his life, and he always made an effort to balance his work commitments with quality time at home. Jack then moves on to explain the reason for his work trip, a high-stakes business meeting in New York City. He explains that this trip wasn't just another job obligation, but an important career opportunity that could secure a better future for his family. Before leaving, Jack made sure everything at home was in order, from Lily's favorite meals to a detailed schedule for Emily. He trusted Emily completely to handle things while he was away, as she had always done before. However, Jack admits to noticing something strange about Emily in the days leading up to his departure. She seemed distant and distracted, barely engaging in their usual conversations. When he kissed her goodbye at the door, she offered only a half-hearted smile. Jack remembers brushing it off as exhaustion or stress from managing the household, but now, looking back, he wonders if that indifference was an early warning sign of what was to come. The story shifts to the day Jack leaves. After hugging Lily tightly and promising to bring her a gift from New York, Jack kisses Emily goodbye at the door. He notices her lukewarm response but brushes it off, reminding her to call or text if there's any issue at home. Emily replies with a short, almost indifferent sure, before walking back into the house. Jack drives away, unaware of the storm brewing behind him. Once Jack is gone, Emily's behavior changes completely. She quickly gets dressed, choosing a more revealing outfit than usual, and grabs her purse. She initially calls a babysitter, likely to maintain the appearance of responsibility, but cancels at the last minute, deciding instead to leave Lily alone. Emily checks the clock, turns off her phone, and leaves to meet her lover at a hotel in downtown Chicago, far from their suburban neighborhood. Back at home, Lily wakes up from a nap to find the house eerily quiet. Confused and scared, she is left alone, unaware of what's happening outside. Lily begins calling out for her mother but gets no response. She picks up the landline and tries calling Emily's cell phone several times, only to hear it go straight to voicemail. As fear turns into hunger, Lily decides to take matters into her own hands. She heads to the kitchen to prepare a snack, but her young age and lack of supervision lead to a tragic accident. Whether it's a fall from a stool while trying to reach something on a high shelf, a severe allergic reaction to something she mistakenly eats, or a fire caused by an attempt to use the stove, the result is catastrophic. Lily is left unconscious or critically injured, her cries unheard in the empty house. This moment, filled with tension and heartbreak, becomes the turning point that connects Jack's rising panic during his work trip to the devastating climax awaiting him at the hospital. Jack's carefully balanced world comes crashing down during what should have been a routine work dinner in New York City. As he sits with his colleagues, his phone buzzes. Expecting a casual update from Emily or Lily, he answers with a smile. But his heart sinks as he hears the voice on the other end, a nurse from the emergency room of a hospital in Chicago. The nurse urgently informs him that Lily has been admitted in critical condition after an accident at home. They explain that she needs an immediate blood or organ donation, and time is running out. Overcome with fear and guilt, Jack doesn't hesitate. He excuses himself from the dinner, barely able to speak, and rushes to book the next flight home. As he waits at the airport, his panic grows with every passing second. He frantically dials Emily's number, but each call goes unanswered, sending him into a spiral of frustration and confusion. Why wasn't she with Lily? Why wasn't she answering her phone? These questions haunt him during the agonizing journey back. When Jack finally arrives at the hospital, he is met with devastating news. Despite the medical team's best efforts, Lily didn't survive. The weight of this revelation crushes him, leaving him in a state of shock. He collapses into a chair, his mind racing with a mix of emotions, grief, guilt, and anger. Jack blames himself for leaving his daughter behind, but his pain quickly shifts to anger at Emily. How could she abandon their daughter when she needed her most? Jack's devastation is made worse by the mystery of Emily's absence, leaving him with a painful truth. The family he thought he could rely on had crumbled in the most tragic way possible. The morning after Lily's tragic death, Emily finally returns home. She walks through the door, looking disheveled, with a faint smell of perfume and alcohol lingering on her clothes, completely unaware of the night's catastrophic events. She casually drops her bag on the counter, assuming Jack is still in New York. But when she sees him sitting silently at the kitchen table, his face pale and his eyes hollow with grief, her confident demeanor falters. Jack stands and walks toward her, his voice trembling with controlled rage as he asks where she was. Confused and defensive, Emily tries to deflect, mumbling about staying with a friend and needing a break. Jack cuts her off, his voice rising, as he reveals everything: the hospital's call, Lily's condition, and how he rushed back only to find it was too late to save her. Emily freezes, the color draining from her face, as she processes the weight of his words. When Jack demands to know why she left their daughter alone and why her phone was off, Emily stumbles through a series of excuses, claiming she didn't think it was a big deal or that she just needed a night to herself. But Jack isn't interested in her justifications. His grief turns into anger as he confronts her about her betrayal, not just of their marriage, but of their shared responsibility as parents. He tells her that her selfish choices directly led to their daughter's death, and nothing she says can undo the damage. The confrontation ends with Jack walking away, his decision already made. He reveals that he has filed for divorce and will never forgive her for abandoning their daughter. Emily is left standing alone in the house, overwhelmed by the consequences of her actions, as Jack leaves to mourn Lily in peace. This confrontation serves as the emotional release after the tragedy, showing the fallout of Emily's betrayal and Jack's determination to rebuild his life without her. It also emphasizes the importance of accountability and the devastating impact of selfishness, tying the resolution back to the themes introduced at the beginning of the story. As the story nears its end, Jack sits in a quiet moment of reflection, his voice filled with both sorrow and resolve. He speaks directly to the audience, recounting how the events of that night changed his life forever. Losing Lily was a pain unlike anything he could have ever imagined, and the betrayal by Emily made it even harder to process. Jack explains that the tragedy wasn't just the result of one reckless decision, but a culmination of misplaced trust and selfish priorities. He admits that he still struggles to forgive himself for leaving on that work trip, even though he knows he couldn't have predicted the outcome. Jack shifts his focus to the lesson he wants others to learn from his story. He emphasizes the importance of trust, not just in relationships, but also in the responsibilities of being a parent. He warns against taking loved ones for granted, urging viewers to prioritize their families over fleeting distractions. Jack's words carry the weight of someone who has experienced the ultimate heartbreak, making his message deeply personal and impactful. In his final moments on screen, Jack looks into the camera with a somber expression and asks a thought-provoking question. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Could you forgive someone who cost you everything? He encourages viewers to share their thoughts in the comments, inviting them to engage in a dialogue about trust, betrayal, and accountability. Jack ends the video by thanking viewers for listening to his story and reminding them to cherish their loved ones every day. He urges them to subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories, emphasizing the importance of learning from the experiences of others. With that, the video closes, leaving viewers with a heavy but meaningful reflection on the consequences of selfishness and the fragility of family bonds. Thank you for being a part of this story with me. If it moved you, please give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to Narrative Stories. I've noticed many of you who enjoy these stories aren't subscribed yet. By subscribing, you're not just following a channel, you're becoming part of a community that values deep, meaningful storytelling. Let's continue exploring these heartfelt journeys together. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you won't miss our next story.